I'm Dr. Liz Stafford, and this is Primary Music in Conversation. My guest for this episode is Janice Rowstron, music, RSE and PSHE lead and Year 5 teacher at Milby Primary School, a two-form entry primary school in Warwickshire. A former secondary music teacher, Janice transferred to primary class teaching 10 years ago, so she really has seen both sides. At Milby, the class teachers teach their own music, with Janice supplementing it with her own whole class instrumental teaching. And I think that's a really interesting hybrid model that I'm sure will give us loads to talk about. I hope you enjoy this episode of Primary Music in Conversation. So welcome, Janice, to Primary Music in Conversation. Could you just introduce yourself to our listeners, please?
Hi Liz, lovely to be here with you this afternoon. So I am Janice Rowstron and I am a class teacher in a primary school in Nuneaton in the Midlands. I have been teaching in primary class for about 10 years now. Prior to that, I was a secondary music head for 12 years as I was secondary music trained. So that was the start of my career. And then I've gone into primary teaching, normal class primary teaching. So now I am also leading the music in a school. And so that brings me here today to talk about our music within our school.
Fantastic. I've spoken to a few people who made the transition from secondary to primary for this podcast, but the majority of them are people who've gone to become a primary music specialist. And I think it's really interesting that you've gone to become a class teacher because you've kind of got the two sides of the same coin, I guess, like the sort of secondary specialism and then the primary generalist angle. So I think you're going to have some real insight that you'll be able to share with our listeners. So perhaps I can just start by asking you how you are organising music in your school. How's it being taught? Who's doing it? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So our curriculum lessons currently are using Kapow primary music schemes. So we've changed from Charanga to Kapow. So I felt that was more an effective scheme, and with support from myself for the staff, we're able to facilitate and use Kapow. So across the curriculum, the teachers teach the music lessons. They teach 1 hour a week, and they teach those themselves. So the class teacher teaches the music curriculum. In order to evidence those lessons, I decided to implement some QR codes. My sister in her secondary school had been using these QR codes for music, so I sort of adapted it and took it into our primary setting and used those. So I set up QR codes for each lesson, and then the teachers will record a small snapshot on an iPad directly onto a QR code, which then I can access really easily for monitoring purposes, and also gives a nice snapshot of what's happened in the lesson. Provided CPD for staff so that they could choose what they wanted to record at the end of a lesson or midway through a lesson. If it was a group work, then I would just make sure that they didn't always choose the same group, and we got sort of a snapshot of the children across the class over the unit. Or they could even record some questioning if it was a lesson that required some questioning, or allowing the children to talk about the interrelated dimensions of music and using their musical vocabulary, then that's encouraged as well. So it's not necessarily just a performance or a composition performance. So the lessons are now evidenced, and that is like a real massive step forward in our school, that we have the evidence. I think it's really important to have that evidence because it really helps me with the monitoring. It helps staff to reflect as well. And in staff meetings, CPD, I've already done like reflections on that, and I'll take some of those videos to the staff meeting to celebrate what staff have been doing in their lessons, and so that they can see, oh, we're on the right track here. Oh, they're doing that in that year group. So I'm doing the right kind of thing here. So I'm okay with what I'm doing. Or maybe for those that might need a bit more support and feeling not quite so confident, might see the way of doing it, and then that might help them, that kind of visual help. So that's how we're evidencing the music lessons, and I'm managing to monitor across the school. I have an LTP, so I'll set up a long-term plan for the year, using the Kapow condensed version, just to allow some flexibility across the year for when a lesson can't be taught or whatever. So I map out, I don't kind of say, right, you're doing this unit in this half term, this one in this half term. I map them out. So sometimes if it's an 8-week half term, they will do one whole unit, and then they will probably begin the next one. And if it's, I try to be realistic. So if it's key stage 1 and foundation stage, I know that they'll be having nativity rehearsals around Christmas. So, that'd be pressure on the timetable for them to fit in music as well. And on top of that, so I will give them fewer lessons to complete. And then at the other end of the scale, I know that year 6, around Easter time, June time, have that extra pressure as well. So then I will make sure that they're sort of jam-packed with lessons earlier in the year, so that they can drop off some lessons later in the year. So just to try and make sure that it works for everybody and it is actually doable, and therefore then gets done. So we use the Kapow quizzes. We do one at the start of the unit and the end of unit, and we take in those scores and reflect on that as well. So that's part of our assessment. We also have I can statements, so that staff aren't just kind of going, well, I think they're working at, I think they're working towards, they managed to do this. So it's really specific in looking at the I can statements and seeing which children, and we track and monitor those as well on a spreadsheet system, which sounds horrific and sounds unmanageable. But actually, if you just send them all green, and then you maybe just focus on the children who you feel didn't quite get that lesson, then you literally just put them as a red. So it's more manageable in the fact that you're not thinking about all of the children all of the time, just focusing on those that, didn't quite get it that lesson. And then again, that helps with the assessment as well, plus the evidence. So the assessment is quite tight and secure now. That's something that we've worked quite hard on. In terms of the LTP, as I said, that's quite bespoke. So next year I will change that again. So if it's a 7-week half term or a full, so I'll literally plan it out every year so that it works. And there's almost no excuses for not being able to do those lessons.
This is sounding so well organized. It's kind of almost blowing my mind, this. And I have, sorry to interrupt you, but I have questions. So because a lot of schools will say things like, we can't fit in an hour of music a week. And also a lot of schools will struggle with the assessment aspect for lots of reasons. Yeah. And I'm just wondering sort of how it came about that you were able to make space in the timetable for that hour-long consistent slot, bearing in mind that obviously, as you've said, you're being realistic and there are weeks where it's not going to get done. So how has that kind of worked, and has there been an impact on other subjects, and have you had kickback from teachers going, I can't do it, or is it all just working really, really well?
Well, we've had in the process of like updating the music and implementing all these new things, we've had a big overhaul on our whole curriculum, and it was looked at that it was identified which subjects were having a certain amount of time, and it's all been mapped out, and our timetables are very spot on for what we should be teaching, when we're teaching it, and how long should be spent on those subjects. It was initially 2 years ago possibly that it was like a 30-minute lesson, or people were doing the 2 30 minutes as an hour every other week, until we implemented Kapow, and then I was like, it needs to be an hour. And if we look at the criteria on the curriculum, it needs to be an hour. It is an hour. That is what is stated. And most subjects, if you look across, don't actually state, it's not stated the time that is needed for those subjects, but it's really specific for music. So I kind of had that in my corner really to try and go, no, it needs to be an hour. Look, it needs to be an hour. So yeah, we get away with it a little bit by dropping off a little bit with the condensed version of Kapow. And also, we have singing assemblies for half an hour weekly, so we can kind of include that a little bit if anybody was to object for not dead on an hour a week. And we also have enrichment opportunities because we go through the Royal Ballet Opera and use all of those, but I'll perhaps talk about those later rather than going off tangent now. So that in the nutshell is the curriculum, and the staff confidence has grown massively. I mean, going from using Charanga, which when I arrived at the school, it was Charanga, and it was a case of, right, we literally like sit down, press the button, press go, and the children are almost just sitting in front of a screen, just following the instructions of these little cartoon characters. And as a music specialist, I'm like, I can't do that. I can't do that. So then I just started doing something else, which was beneficial to the children. But obviously, nobody else had the ability to do that, or maybe the confidence or whatever. So until we changed schemes, it couldn't all change. So it was quite tragic, I felt, as a music specialist for a while. But now I'm really proud of it now, and I'm really proud of the staff and what they've taken on and how they've done it. We've implemented quite a few CPDs to make sure that, they're on the right track. They know what they're doing. They have the option to come talk to me about things. And of course, on the Kapow, there's the teacher videos as well, which are amazing for those people that really haven't got a clue about the music vocabulary. And, I'm very mindful that, of course, I know exactly what everything's on about, and I know exactly how to do things. So I'm very mindful of that perhaps most of the other staff do not, and therefore the confidence level can be lower, can't it? But after doing drop-ins and monitoring and things, and recent Ofsted in December, I found that there's a real confidence around, and people are enjoying the lessons. They're enjoying teaching them. The children are enjoying having the lessons. The pupil voice is very powerful and effective, and children are able to tell you what they learnt last year, but what they're now learning this year, how last year can help them. So the progression and skills that's in place as well, especially through Kapow, is essential in driving that forward, which is really working well.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. That's really good to know. I think sometimes people are really snotty about schemes, and I've talked about this with some of my other guests as well. But actually, when you find the right scheme, and there is no one right scheme that suits every single school, you've got to kind of shop around and find the one. And it sounds like you found one that's working really, really well for you. And I'm just intrigued to know kind of, because you're also RSE and PSHE lead, and you're year 5 teacher, aren't you? How are you getting the time to do all this monitoring, and like, is there additional time given to you or are you just trying to squeeze that in wherever you can?
Well, because we've had this massive overhaul of the curriculum, and our school's been on a journey, and our recent Ofsted was very complimentary. We've gone into the realms of making sure we've got action plans for our subjects, and we meet with the deputy head who's in charge of the curriculum. We meet with her often, and we'll have those individual meetings with her, and we'll talk through what we need to do, and then she'll allocate us time throughout the term on the timetable to come out to do that. So if like the LTP needs rewriting, or I need to do an audit on instruments, or I want to go around and do some monitoring, it was always decided that my subject as music would be taken through for an Ofsted deep dive. That was always going to be the case. It ended up not a deep dive type of Ofsted in the end. We had an ungraded inspection, but my head teacher sort of campaigned with Ofsted inspector to try and get music looked at. So in terms of monitoring things like that, I probably had, at the start of the year, a lot more time than everybody else had in order to get those things in place, and making sure that we've got the drop-ins so that we could, choose which staff we wanted to show and things like that. In terms of monitoring the QR codes and the evidence, it's very easy for me to do that at home. So just get the iPad out and click on those. It's actually quite enjoyable to do. So yeah, but
That
yeah,
sounds
no,
very nerdy of you. But I would be exactly the same. We're like, oh, what can I do with my evening? I'll watch all the classes in my school doing a bit of music.
yeah, it's great.
And the teachers they're engaged with that, it sounds like it, and they're happy, they've gone all in. You've not had anybody who's sort of doesn't understand why or doesn't want to do it. It sounds like they're all just on board, which is fantastic.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, I've recently done an NPQLT, and I'm currently doing an SL. So the whole implementation and making changes and staff buy-in and watching out for certain things. I've been conscious when implementing all of these new changes and letting them know the reasons why and all of that. So massively got staff buy-in with this, and it's something that across the whole school that we're really proud of as a subject. So and that there's lots of other things that we do as well on top of the curriculum, which is exciting as well.
We're definitely going to talk about those in a moment. Um, what what I think is really lovely about this is that often people will say, "Oh, we can't do music because we don't have a specialist," or there's some other kind of excuse. And this is a really good example of, yes, obviously you are a specialist, but you're not teaching all the music. You're, taking the lead on it, which obviously is a massive advantage for the school. It's really helpful to have you in that
Yeah, yeah,
position. But it's the teachers themselves who are teaching music, and if they can do it, anybody else can do it. And yes, obviously
absolutely.
it must be very advantageous to know that you're there in your classroom and they can just pop in and go, I don't understand this bit. And you can just tell them what it means.
Yeah,
So definitely they probably have an easier time of it. But it's really nice to know, because I think there's a real push. And one of the reasons for starting the podcast was, just kind of frustration with the whole dialogue around music. And schools don't do music, schools don't even have music specialists, and it's not a thing, is it, in a primary
no,
school? There are people who are primary music specialists and they do a great job, but
yeah,
actually
yeah,
it's not the norm. And it's great to hear like about a school like your school, where the teachers are just getting on with teaching the music, and you've put all those mechanisms in for supporting them, and it's working for you. And I hope that our listeners are going to go away and go, right, great, these are some of the things I can do. I can do that stuff with the QR codes.
yeah,
I can go and make that case for it being an hour a week if we have flexibility in some of the
yeah,
weeks where it's busy. It's all about making those little adjustments, isn't it, to make it work in your context, I suppose.
yeah, definitely. And I'm really fortunate that I work for a team of people, the leadership team, that are incredibly supportive and have kind of jumped on the opportunity of allowing me to do what I've wanted to do, really, and make these changes. I mean, it wouldn't have been possible had they not sort of had you know, the need and the want to go down this route, and obviously the trust in me in making those decisions. So I'm really lucky that I've had that opportunity as well. Would have found it incredibly sad, I think, had my ideas gone forward and been rejected, and we were still stuck in the same position.
I suppose it's
Frustration
I
would have been
suppose it's
very,
helped that it's part of our kind of whole school kind of relook at the curriculum, hasn't it? So it's
yeah,
not just you bashing on about music and then shoehorning it in. It's
yeah,
part and parcel of the entire kind of
yeah,
development of the school, which must be really helpful.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so, in addition to that, we'd implemented the new Kapow when that was all going on last year and possibly even the year before. Time flies. But we were having Warwickshire music in school for both peripatetic lessons, but also we were having upbeat. So we were paying for upbeat and facilitating violin or ukulele lessons across year 3 and year 5. So they would have half a year each. Um, until kind of we got to the maybe this time last year, and my head teacher was like, "Why don't you do the lessons, Janice? Why don't we pull you out of class for an afternoon each week, and you go to year 1 up to year 6? So you give them half a term each, and you choose what you're going to do with them, but you do that kind of concept of the whole class instrumental."
Mm.
Um, so I got my thinking hat on and thought how I would do that. So since September, I have been teaching across year 1 to year 6, not necessarily in chronological order, up up the age range. I kind of went to year 1, year 2 later in the year, once they were older in their year group as well, to sort of help that situation a little bit. So progression of skills wise, I've found that teaching year 1 and 2 ocarina, which is very suitable for the size of their hands and all of that. And then 3 and 4 have been doing recorder. So then the development on from ocarina to recorder. And then was incredibly lucky. Last summer, the business manager sent me an email to say that I could put myself forward for a bid for funding to buy something musical that I wanted to buy that would benefit us. So at that point, I was thinking, well, actually, if I could get a class set of keyboards, I could then teach year 5 and 6 keyboards. So that's the progression, moving on again from the recorders and the ocarina. We were very lucky to be successful. And so we managed to get 15 keyboards and rechargeable batteries and rechargeable battery packs so that we could facilitate them anywhere. And they're currently set up in a music room, and I take year 5 and 6 to that room where we have whole class keyboard lessons when it's their half term. So being able to do this as well is also really beneficial to me, because I get to not only just see the snapshots of the QR codes, but I actually get to teach all of year 1 to 6 across the year and see their skills, and then also question them and kind of test them without them knowing me that I'm testing them. But I can reference and think, okay, so yeah, they're definitely developing their skills, because I can see what year 2 are able to do and what year 1 are able to do. And it's really, really helpful to me for that kind of whole picture as well. Yeah, so that's kind of the whole class instrumental.
So is that replacing? So they're not having
Yes.
music when you're teaching that as a substitute for the music curriculum.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I will have so I've got the condensed version, which is the 4 units, 20 lessons, so 20 hours of music. But then I also go in for the half term, so they get that on top of the 4 condensed hours. So it wasn't like that before. They would just do the 20 hours. But then I thought, well, I'm not going to reduce another unit off to fit me in for half a term. So I'll just take a bit of that spare time that we had, and I'll go in on that as well. I've also developed the listening, because the curriculum has obviously got a vast list of pieces that they recommend students listen to. And I've tried many different ways for this, and saying, this is your list, this year group, this is your list, click on the link, listen to it whenever. Try and make sure you listen to them all throughout the year. But then it was difficult to sort of know if people were using them, and sort of, was that being facilitated? I'm really not sure. So I just thought, well, probably the best thing to do is to make a set of slides for each year group. So I made PowerPoints with the same slide on, all the interrelated dimensions of music and the images and the little snapshot of what they are. And then a link at the bottom to say what period of music it was, whether it was Baroque or classical. Click on the link, goes to YouTube, and then we go back and freeze the slide so that the children can see the interrelated dimensions of music, and ask them to listen to the music and think about what they want to talk about. What do they want to talk about? If there's something on there they're not so great at yet, maybe they want to challenge themselves and focus on that one. Maybe they want to just think about one thing. Maybe they want to think about more than one thing. And then it's amazing to watch the hands fly up as soon as you've finished playing the extract. The hands fly up and they literally bombard me with musical vocabulary and the ability to talk about musically exactly what they've just listened to. And this year, really sort of pushed that this year, and sent those PowerPoints out to every year group. So they didn't have to make them. I made them for them. I said, just pop it on the start of your PowerPoint that you make. And then that can literally be the starter of every lesson. And of course, because I'm going around doing the whole class instrumental, I also do that at the start of the lesson. So I get to see the children's responses to that across the whole school as well. And I'm absolutely blown away by how they can talk about these things, and they'll tell me about the dynamics and the tempo and the texture. And it's just really natural to them to be able to use all of this vocabulary and the skill of listening and being able to hear those things. So that's really
Mm.
impressive as well.
That's fantastic. I feel like I've used the word fantastic multiple times in this conversation because it is blowing my mind. My brains are starting to leak out of my ears because there is so much stuff happening. I'm interested in the keyboards, and the reason I'm interested in the keyboards is because I've always thought I don't understand why more primary schools don't do keyboards, given that the instrument of choice for most secondary schools in Key Stage 3 is keyboard.
Yeah.
Did you make that decision? Was that why you made that decision, knowing what happens in secondary, or was there another reason for you picking keyboard as your main instrument for year 5 and 6?
Yeah, I mean, that in mind, because obviously being a secondary music specialist myself, I know that keyboard is quite a big thing in the classroom in secondary. So the development of that would be beneficial to them. I also thought that, obviously teaching the kapow lessons, we get the option of glockenspiels or keyboards and doing the blues unit. And having taught the blues unit in year 5, I was thinking, you know what, this would be so much better on keyboards. So
Mm.
not only was I thinking of it for the year 5, 6 whole class instrumental, I was kind of thinking for it for anybody that might want to use it as well in their normal curriculum kapow lessons, because that would be beneficial too. And also just to give the children some excitement of learning a different instrument rather than a glockenspiel, and just the ability to do something different and have something different and then be excited by that as well.
I nearly said fantastic again, and then I had to bite it back. Amazing, wonderful, excellent. I'll get my thesaurus out in a minute. So let's talk about, even though obviously curriculum's already jam-packed, let's talk about extracurricular. What's going on in terms of your enrichment and your instrumental lessons and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so Warwickshire Music provide our instrumental lessons. So that goes on in the background, and the children go off, have their lesson, come back. It's quite a good uptake on that. We've got a variety of instruments to that. In terms of extracurricular, it's quite difficult for me to fit in much more than a choir, really. Previously, I've had after school clubs where we've done like a boom whacker club, we've done a singing club. We've just done a general music club where we literally just sat down with some percussion instruments with the children and played circle games and things with the instruments. But currently it is just a Key Stage 2 choir that we have. There's so many other things going on in school for after school clubs. I run the choir at lunchtime, which enables children to come quite easily, rather than them, just having it. And it also goes on all year, whereas the clubs at school tend to be like a half-term thing.
Mm.
Whereas for me, that didn't really work. I wanted to have something that was consistent the whole year and children could attend all of the time. Whereas that didn't really work for the after-school club, because I was sort of given 30 children and those are my children. Because that's how it works across all the clubs. Just to keep it fair for everybody. So yeah, it works a lot better for me being at lunchtime. In terms of enrichment, that's something that I've really tried to push this academic year. So I've been following the Royal Ballet Opera, and in December, the whole school took part in the Everybody Sing with the magic flute, and so they got to experience real opera singers singing and playing, and that was really lovely for them. I also, for many years, I've wanted to take children to the school's concert with the CBSO at the Birmingham Symphony Hall, but it all seemed to have missed the opportunity of getting the tickets. And with my sister being a teacher as well, and she organises that every year for her secondary school, she's like, get the tickets now. So it came out in September. She sent me the link and I'm like, right, okay, I'm going to get those tickets now. So we reserved like 48 tickets. And we just put it out there as just Key Stage 2 children. So I didn't want to take a specific year group. I wanted to just enable the whole of Key Stage 2 the opportunity to go to this Key Stage 2 concert in Birmingham and be able to, if they wanted to go as siblings, if they wanted to be friends across different year groups, like maybe children in different year groups in the choir might want to go together. So put it out as this was something quite new for our school. So put it out as a first come, first served basis. And we had 48 places and 100 children wanted to have a place on the bus. Couldn't have them sitting on laps. So unfortunately, we just went with the first 48 that came in. So that was a really great uptake, which I was very impressed with. And the children that we took thoroughly enjoyed the experience. And it's definitely something that I'd be wanting to do as an annual event now. And it really was lovely to have them across the different year groups because they did come as siblings. And there was children in year 3 sitting with children in year 5 and having conversation together on the coach and about what they just listened to. I also do the social media for our school. So we've been doing these curriculum newsletters where it's just a focus on a particular subject. And I sort of started implementing where I'd put pupil voice videos on. So it'd be a digital newsletter. So I wanted it to have digital content, not just to be emailed out. So it's not on a piece of paper. So I'll put videos on of the children playing and things like that. So on the coach on the way home, I wanted to choose a child from each year group to provide me with some pupil voice of their experience that they just had, and just passed the iPad round on the coach and they sat there typing out, and I sent it back down to me and I'm reading it on the coach thinking, wow, these children have really enjoyed that experience. So yeah, I was able to share that obviously on our social media and on our music newsletter. So that's a new enrichment opportunity for us. Also, I taught in year 3 last year for the first time, and having come from Key Stage 1, I felt a bit sorry for year 3 because they came up and they were like, oh, we don't have a nativity anymore. What do we get? We don't do a nativity now at Christmas. What do we get? So I did kind of feel for them. So I was like, what can I do for them? What can I do for them as their teacher in year 3? So I decided to reach out to our local secondary school, where my daughters also attend. So I know the head of music there. So I reached out to her to see if it would be possible for us in the last week before Christmas to attend their Christmas concert rehearsal that they do in the daytime. So my girls were in the concert as well, so I knew that they were rehearsing that day, so I could sort of approach the head of music and say, I know you're doing this. Is there any chance we could literally just turn up, 60 children, sit, and we will just watch your rehearsal? We don't need you to do as a concert or anything. We just want to watch your rehearsal for the evening. And then she obviously spoke to her senior leaders. They all thought it was a great idea. And then for the first time, 2 years ago, I think, we walked down to the local secondary school, and they, in the end, were actually given a concert because the head of music was so lovely, and she sort of spoke to them and said, right, we're going to play this to you, and this is this instrument, and she really got into it, which is not what I expected them to do. I didn't need them to do that because I didn't want to put them out too much when they were getting ready for a concert. But yeah, she was more than happy to do that. So now that's also become an annual event where on the calendar for year 3, they get to go down there as long as they will have us for. So
I bet the
absolutely.
secondary pupils love that as well, the opportunity to like see cute smaller kids come in and listen to them play.
Yeah, absolutely. And those that play the drum kit and things like that, they're looking at these kids on the drum kits and wow, look what they can do. I'm learning to do that, or just inspired to then go on and join up for lessons and do that themselves. So
Yeah,
yeah, really exciting.
I- I've talked to a few of my guests about like the power of seeing somebody who's just slightly older than you doing something like that. And often we think
Yeah.
about kind of getting adult role models in, but actually what you really need is somebody who just is a little bit further on than you are to inspire you to take the next step to carry on.
Yeah, definitely. And in addition to that as well, I was thinking, well, I want to do more stuff. I want more exciting stuff to do. So what shall we do? Well, January is a bit of a boring month. Um, everybody kind of stays at home. It's wet, miserable, cold usually. So what can we do? So we made a creative arts house competition. So the arts lead, who is also a year 5 teacher with me, is somebody that's working on Arts Mark with me. We're going for Arts Mark the first time. Well, I think it might have happened many years ago at our school, but recently, not at all. So I'll say it's the first time. So yeah, so we were thinking of ideas that could sort of enhance our Arts Mark journey as well. So we decided to come up with a creative arts house competition. We have house colours at school, but it's not something that's really used apart from sports day. So kind of ticking the box of trying to develop houses and promote that kind of thing as well. We decided to create this competition. So I worked with my sister, who's done similar things as well, to create a video to launch on our social media, getting the children excited about taking part in this competition. And they could do a dance, or they could compete in the art category or the music category, or all three if they wished. And what they would do is simply either complete some artwork and send it in, or they would record a dance or record some music that they were playing or singing, and then that would get emailed into school. So it was kind of like a win-win situation. Like, we spent the time setting the competition up and then looking for nice trophies that we could award the children, because we'd like it to be an annual event. And then it really was just pushing it and promoting it, and handing it over to the parents really, and then off the children went with it, got them excited in assembly and things, and off they went. And we said, you know, if you wanted to compete and have an entry with a group of you, then absolutely you can, but you just make sure that you're all in the same house. Mixed houses is not going to work for you, so make sure you're in the same house. So we had some people who were dancing and in groups and things. So it was really, as a creative thing for the creative arts, it was really something that kind of unified us and brought us together. So that was really good as well. So that's definitely something that we will have as an annual event, and those trophies will be, so the child wins it for their house. So red team will have won for music, or blue team for art, or so forth. So yeah, that's something as well that we put in that boring month of January.
So obviously it's the less boring month of June now, and we're kind of approaching the end of the academic year. And I hesitate to ask this question because you're doing so much already, but what's the plan for next year? What new stuff is happening? What are you going to fiddle with and tweak and do differently next year?
I'm not sure yet. Trying to think forward to next year, and what more we could bring. Is it about bringing more? Is it about tweaking what we've already got? I'd like to develop the choir more. We visited our local church and sang at a Christmas event. I'd like to maybe try and do some more community events. We kind of struggle at our school because we don't have a minibus and we'd have to walk everywhere. And we are not really close to many things. So in terms of going to a care home or something like that, it might be nice to take, you know, the children to sing somewhere like that for Christmas or whenever. But actually, it's quite a distance to walk to those places. So I think for me, sort of like investigating, getting music out into the community more so than just the church in town and the local secondary school. That's something that I would really like to develop and see where we could go with that. In terms of allowing children the opportunity to perform is something I would like to think about as well. I mean, obviously the Creative Arts House competition enabled children to perform, and it also gave us insight into children who we did not know were having these lessons at home and could play these instruments. So that was really handy to see as well. And some real talent out there that we weren't aware of because they weren't having lessons in school. So when we did when the keyboards came out and I did them with my year 5s, we had some children as well that wanted to perform, and they said, oh, could I possibly perform because I play the keyboard? I was like, of course. So if you want to next week, if you want to bring some music in or whatever, then bring it in and I'll give you that time to perform to your peers in class. And then there was a child next door in the other year 5 class and he wanted to play his guitar and sing to everybody. So in year 5, we've really tried to promote little sort of ad hoc mini performances from the children. So it'd be quite nice to see if maybe we could get something like that a bit more whole school. Is that something we could get into assemblies? Could I maybe put an assembly time forward where these children sign up and they choose to do like a mini concert to everybody? So, yeah, I think for me, it's kind of like giving the children opportunities to perform in school and I suppose out of school to the community as well.
Fantastic. I think you are going to be very busy for the foreseeable future. I can feel it coming.
Yeah.
One final question for you. If you had to give like other music subject leaders one piece of advice, to support them to develop the kind of provision you've got in your school, what would that piece of advice be?
I think to make sure that you're consistent and that if you're rolling out something new, that you've got a reason and research for why you're rolling that out, why you want to do it, but then not just leaving it because people have a culture to drop music and other subjects off the end of the timetable. And if they're not evidencing it in books or on recordings or whatever, then who knows whether they've done the lesson or not. And it becomes quite easy to just not do it. So for me, the advice would be to make sure that you're making everybody accountable in whichever way. So the QR codes, I'm regularly emailing people saying, oh, I've listened to all the QR codes this evening, but I noticed that this one and this one is missing. So if you can upload them, then that would be great. So just that kind of approach, or I will be officially monitoring when I'm given my time, and I can just see that you've got gaps here and here. So, I really want to be able to listen to all of those. So that would be fantastic. So it's really just that monitoring and the accountability and just making sure people know that your subject is valued. You really value your subject, and actually it has its place on the timetable with every other subject there, just as much as the core subjects at the top. And that's something that we've really sort of pushed this year at our school, that actually every subject is important and there's no subject at the bottom of the timetable. They all have their equal time for their subject requirement and it gets done. So for me, yeah, I think accountability and making sure that actually people are on board with why you want to make these changes, and actually you then being consistent and not just be like, oh, I've rolled this out, oh, I've got something else to do, I'll come back 6 months later to it. It literally is an ongoing process that you just need to live and have in the back of your mind to think, oh, I need to look at that, I need to look at that. That would be my advice. That's not one bit, it's a few bits, but
I think that is very, very sensible advice. It's not just about like buying a scheme and slapping it onto your system and going, oh, off you go. Or, oh, we're going to have these whole class instrumental lessons. And so now you don't have to think about music because I'm doing that bit. It's about, yeah, as you say, that the consistency, the accountability, the getting people on board and making them understand why it's important, which you clearly have done in your school. I know that our listeners are going to have got so much out of that conversation. I've really, really enjoyed chatting to you today. So thank you very much for being a guest on Primary Music in Conversation, Janice Rowstron.
thank you very much, Liz. Really enjoyed that. Thank you.
What an enjoyable conversation I've just had with Janice. What I really like about the way things are happening in her school and the model that she's presented is that it is something that is really achievable. And of course, I've talked to lots of specialists during the course of this podcast, and specialists are great. I am one myself. I'm not down on specialists whatsoever, but it's very difficult for a school who has no specialist to kind of, I think, get to grips with, what they can learn from a specialist model, how that applies to them, if it applies to them. And of course, they've got this lovely kind of halfway house at Milby where they have got a specialist. But what that specialist is doing is enabling all the generalist teachers and supporting them and helping them to teach their own music, which is a much more sustainable model. And it's a much more realistic model when we're thinking large scale. There are never going to be enough enough primary music specialists to cover all the schools in the country. We already don't have enough secondary music specialists to cover all our secondary schools, where it's a requirement that the subjects are taught by specialists. So, we're on a hiding to nothing if we think the way to improve primary music is just to get a specialist for every school. But models like this, where you're taking people's expertise and you're upskilling everybody else, you're bringing everybody else with you, I think are really, really great. And even if you're a school where you don't have somebody who is a specialist in that position, in the kind of leadership role for the subject, you can utilize your local music hub. You can pair up with other schools. You can go and get support from teacher training providers. There are people out there who can come and help you to develop that kind of model where you are teaching confidently your own music. Of course, schemes are great for that as well. Janice spoke a lot about Kapow. This isn't the BBC, so I don't have any obligation to say anything about other schemes. However, other schemes are available. You may well be aware that I have an association with Kapow, so I wanted to make sure straight away that people knew that that was coming from Janice, and it's great that she's really enthusiastic about Kapow. That was not a plant. I didn't make her do that, and there are other schemes available. And as we discussed during that conversation, I think it's really important that if you're going to use a scheme, you look at what scheme is going to work best for you in your context. There are loads and loads and loads and loads of them out there now, so definitely take a little look. If you are thinking about changing up your scheme, don't just kind of default to what the one or two you've heard of. Have a look around, see what there is to offer, including, of course, I should say, Kapow. So on that note, I really hope that you've enjoyed that episode. We are going to be back, of course, with some more episodes before the end of this season. We're going to talk to other teachers in different situations with different models and lots of different stuff going on in their schools. So if you want to catch those conversations, you can subscribe wherever you are listening to this podcast, or under the video if you're watching us on YouTube. You can also join our mailing list. You'll find the details of that in the podcast notes, or again under the video in YouTube. And that way you can stay on top of all the stuff that we do with primary music in conversation and all the other wider stuff that we do with music education solutions. I really hope you enjoyed that episode, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Primary Music in Conversation is presented by Dr. Liz Stafford, edited by Kay Charlton, and produced by Music Education Solutions.